Imagine taking an exam that basically dictates your entire future.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, the pressure is just suffocating. So you sit down, you take it, and, well, you fail.
Right, which is devastating.
Exactly, devastating. But you study harder, you pivot your strategy, and you try again. And you fail again. Now imagine sitting in that sterile, fluorescent-lit exam room, not 3 times, not 4 times, but 8 separate times in a row.
Wow, 8 times.
8 times. Hand over your test, feeling that crushing weight of yet another probable failure. I mean, at what point does perseverance stop being a virtue and just become pure delusion?
Well, that is the psychological line most people never even approach, let alone actually cross.
Right.
We are biologically wired to avoid repeated pain, social humiliation, and failure. After the 3rd or maybe 4th consecutive rejection, the human brain's natural defense mechanism usually kicks in.
It just shuts you down.
Exactly. It screams, "Stop touching the hot stove." Finding the psychological fuel to touch it an 8th time, that requires a fundamental rewiring of how you process defeat.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to today's deep dive. Today, we are looking at a masterclass in that exact psychological rewiring.
We really are.
We've gathered a massive stack of sources for this one. Articles, interview transcripts, lecture notes, and social media archives to explore the life and philosophy of Dr. Dai-Chen Shi.
And for those who don't know, he is a profoundly influential Taiwanese author and motivational speaker.
Over 50 books.
Yeah, 50 books and over 3,000 speeches to his name.
It's incredible, but the mission of this deep dive isn't just to, recite his biography. It is to extract the highly specific, actionable mechanisms he used to turn absolute failure into a deeply fulfilling, resilient life. So you, listening right now, can actually use these tools.
Because before we can understand him as this polished, best-selling communicator, we have to examine the architecture of the foundation he built when he was struggling simply to survive in society.
Right, his early life was tough.
It really was. Dr. Dai's early life was defined by the kind of academic and professional failure that usually just breaks people entirely. In a highly competitive Taiwanese educational system, he failed his university entrance exams twice.
Which is just a staggering blow to a young person's identity. And the friction didn't stop there. After he completed his mandatory military service, he hit a complete professional brick wall.
2.5 years, right.
Yeah, 2.5 years completely unemployed, applying for jobs, waking up to empty days, and getting absolutely zero traction.
During this extended period of unemployment, he desperately wanted to study abroad in the United States. He felt he needed to shift his trajectory.
But there was a massive barrier.
A huge one. His English proficiency was exceptionally low. And to be admitted to a U.S. university, international students have to pass the TOEFL exam.
Which is the exam we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. He took it, failed, and entered this grueling cycle. He sat for that exam a total of 8 times before finally securing a passing score.
I just can't imagine the mental toll of that.
But it eventually allowed him to earn his master's degree in broadcasting and television at Marquette University in the U.S.
The sheer perseverance is fascinating. But he didn't just passively wait for his English to improve. And he definitely didn't rely on raw willpower alone because, well, willpower depletes.
It does very quickly.
Instead, he built an operational system for his daily life. Our sources detail this physical checklist he created as a student. Every single day, he demanded 5 concrete actions from himself.
And they were very specific.
Super specific. He had to practice broadcasting, complete a writing exercise, do bookkeeping, perform a set of push-ups, and listen to an English language radio program called Studio Classroom.
This is where we transition from just a story of effort into a real study of behavioral psychology.
Oh, absolutely.
In his notes, Dr. Day explicitly mentions that the physical act of marking off those boxes released a flood of what he termed brain morphine.
Brain morphine. I love that term.
Right. Which is what we understand neurobiologically as endorphins and dopamine. He didn't view discipline as a tax he had to pay for future success.
He weaponized his own neurochemistry.
Exactly. He made discipline a daily, immediate payout.
It's the exact same psychological loop that video game developers use to keep players engaged. You have your daily quest login, gather 10 herbs, defeat 3 monsters, and your character levels up.
And you get the little sound effect.
Right, you get a visual reward, an auditory chime, and a dopamine hit. Dr. Day was basically gamifying his own existence. Every check mark was an immediate neurological reward for doing the hard thing.
That mechanism is how he lived out one of his core personal maxims. In Mandarin, it's 生命 pita, It translates roughly to mission must be accomplished.
Mission must be accomplished. That's powerful.
It is. Culturally and philosophically, it carries the weight of an unbreakable internal contract. Think about it. When you rely on external motivation, like a strict boss or the fear of a bad grade, your drive just collapses the moment that external pressure is removed.
Because the threat is gone.
Right. But by tying his dopamine release to his own daily checklist, Shimin became a self-generating engine. He trained his brain to literally crave the completion of difficult tasks.
So for you, listening right now, the question is how you can manipulate your own daily friction. What is a 5-item checklist you can create today that shifts your difficult tasks from feeling like a draining obligation into a series of highly rewarding micro-victories?
How do you manufacture your own brain morphine, basically?
Exactly. Establishing that baseline of discipline is critical. It got him through his education and eventually secured him a highly competitive job as a television reporter.
But raw discipline is just an engine running smoothly.
Right. It doesn't navigate the road.
No. And it certainly doesn't make someone a masterful storyteller capable of moving millions of readers. To achieve that, Dr. Dye had to cultivate a highly intentional filter for reality.
Because he realized that discipline applied to the wrong target is just wasted energy. He made a strategic decision to completely abandon his weaknesses like math and science and pour all his momentum into his natural strengths.
Which were writing, public speaking, and calligraphy.
And within that specific lane, he developed what he calls the observing eye.
The observing eye is a fascinating concept. It bridges the gap between passive living and active material gathering.
There's a great anecdote in the sources that highlights this brilliantly. Dr. Dye was in Penang, Malaysia, traveling for a speaking engagement. He's in the back of a car rushing through a city she doesn't even live in, and he just glances out the window.
Just looking at the street.
Yeah, and he spots a very simple, mundane banner hanging outside a local kindergarten. It read, and I'm quoting here, "Children like fun places, but stay in places with love."
It's a profoundly simple sentiment. Very easy to ignore as just local street signage.
But it struck him so deeply that he actually ordered his driver to pull the car over immediately.
Right then and there.
Right in the middle of traffic. He halted his entire schedule just so he could physically record this insight, just to use it later in a lecture about family dynamics. He absolutely refused to let a moment of wisdom pass him by simply because he was in a hurry.
But, cognitive load is a real physiological limitation.
Oh, for sure.
So let's push back on this idea of constant observation for a second. If you are actively analyzing every street sign, every interaction with a barista, and every overheard conversation on a train looking for profound life lessons, you risk severe mental burnout.
You would be completely exhausted by noon.
Exactly. How does he avoid becoming paralyzed by an overload of data?
Well, that is the exact trap most people fall into when they try to become, quote unquote, more observant. They try to brute force their attention.
Right, which doesn't work.
No. What Dr. Dye did was systematize his observation by training his reticular activating system, or the RAS.
What's fascinating here is how the reticular activating system works. It's a network of neurons located in the brainstem that acts as a gatekeeper for information.
Because we just take in too much data otherwise.
Exactly. At any given second, your brain is bombarded with millions of bits of sensory data. Your RAS filters out the noise and only lets in what it deems important. If you buy a red car, suddenly you see red cars everywhere.
Right, the red car effect.
The cars were always there.
Yeah.
Your RAS simply started prioritizing them. Dr. Dye didn't strain his brain to analyze everything. He consistently prioritized stories of empathy, resilience, and human connection, effectively training his RAS to automatically flag them.
It's a passive filter, but with a very active capture mechanism. And that active capture is totally non-negotiable for him. In his lectures, he strictly insists that his audiences take physical, handwritten notes.
Not just snapping photos of his slides with their smartphone.
Right, no phones.
Because taking a photograph is a completely passive act. When you take a picture of a slide, you are offshoring the memory to your device. You are telling your brain, hey, you don't need to process this, the silicon chip will hold it.
You're outsourcing your brain.
Yeah. The physical act of writing engages multiple cognitive pathways. You've got motor skills, visual processing, and semantic memory all working together. Writing is how you program the RAS. Dr. Dye believes that stories are the shortest possible path to the truth.
Much like how parables have been used in historical and religious text for millennia.
Exactly.
They bypass the brain's natural resistance to being lectured. If I tell you, hey, you need to be more resilient, your defenses immediately go up.
You'd probably roll your eyes.
I would, but if I tell you a story about a man failing a test 8 times, you internalize the lesson emotionally. So gathering these stories is crucial. However, having a massive mental database of observations is completely useless if you never run a query on it.
Right. Observation without execution is just daydreaming.
Dr. Day didn't just hoard these insights in some private journal. He aggressively willed his insights into the marketplace.
This is where the synthesis of his television reporting background and his personal philosophy really shines. He understood that intention means absolutely nothing without physical hustle.
I was looking at the spreadsheet data he kept for his very first book. It was titled, Are You a Master of Speaking? It had a modest initial print run of just 3,000 copies.
Which is pretty standard for a first-time author.
Yeah, and the standard playbook there is to cross your fingers, beg your friends to buy a copy, and pray the algorithm favors you.
But he completely rejected that passive approach. Instead of just hoping for sales, he executed his own on-the-ground supply chain management.
He actually physically traveled to bookstores across Taiwan.
Yes, auditing their shelves himself. He checked their inventory, compiled hard spreadsheet data on sell-through rates, and tracked exactly where the demand was surging.
Then, armed with his own undeniable data, he walked into his publisher's office and personally pitched the chairman to print more copies. He essentially proved to them that they were leaving money on the table.
And because of that relentless, unglamorous groundwork, a book that started with 3,000 copies ultimately sold 350,000 copies.
350,000, that is insane.
It is a stunning real-world application of another of his core philosophies. In Mandarin, it's Wo Yuan Yi, which translates to I am willing.
I am willing.
Success isn't a mystical lightning bolt. It is a slow, methodical accumulation of these willing, active moments. Empty thoughts, even deeply observant ones, lead to an empty life. You have to be willing to do the awkward, uncomfortable physical actions.
And he inspires that exact same immediate action in his readers, too. There's a moving anecdote from an interview transcript in our sources. A young woman was standing in the aisle of a public bookstore reading one of Dr. Dai's books.
Right, I remember this one.
The stories were so resonant that she actually began to cry right there in the aisle.
Which is an incredibly vulnerable, highly uncomfortable state to be in, surrounded by strangers.
Exactly. She desperately needed a tissue, but was paralyzed by shyness. But then she remembered the specific advice she had literally just read on the page.
Open your mouth and you have a chat.
Yes. Instead of waiting until she felt brave, she gathered her courage in that exact second, walked right up to the store clerk, and asked for a tissue.
To a bystander, asking for a tissue is a microscopic event. But psychologically, it represents a massive leap. It illustrates closing the gap between being emotionally moved and taking physical action.
She didn't let the emotion dissipate.
No, she harnessed it instantly. That is the true embodiment of I am willing.
That proactive energy is incredibly powerful. You train your brain, you gather your data, you hustle, and you act. But we have to address the reality of chaos.
Ah, yes. The uncontrollable variables.
Because what happens when you do everything right, you put in the grueling hours, and a black swan event completely derails you. Even the most disciplined master of motivation experiences catastrophic bad days.
Chaos is the variable you can never fully control. And the sources contain a surprisingly chaotic story that highlights this perfectly. Dr. Dai, a man who's written over 50 books on mastering your life, was simply out for a casual bicycle ride.
Just a normal day.
Right. When he was suddenly ambushed and chased by 2 aggressive stray dogs.
He genuinely panics, loses control of the bicycle, and flips over the handlebars twice, tumbling hard into the street.
And as he's lying there in the dirt, bruised and bleeding, he realizes he has narrowly avoided being crushed by an oncoming car.
It's terrifying. It's an uncontrollable, highly dangerous situation that completely shatters the illusion that a positive attitude acts as some sort of magical force field against bad luck.
Right, bad things still happen to positive people.
But the magic isn't in preventing the fall. The magic is in the cognitive framework he applies while he's lying there in the dirt. He uses this terrifying incident to teach a principle central to his worldview. It's jizu, yer wangjibuju. This translates to, remember the 1 or 2, forget the 8 or 9.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying logic here is a radical acceptance of reality. He posits that life, by its very nature, is 80 to 90% unsatisfactory.
Wow, 80 to 90%.
Yeah. Projects fail, people betray you, illness strikes, or stray dogs chase you into traffic.
Yay.
If your baseline expectation is that life should be 100% smooth, every single disruption is a devastating tragedy.
But if you accept the 80% friction as the baseline, you can actively choose to hyperfocus on the 10 to 20% that actually goes right.
Exactly. The car didn't hit him. He didn't break a bone. He survived.
This isn't toxic positivity where you just pretend the bad things didn't happen. It is a highly calculated tool for rapid psychological recovery.
So I really encourage everyone listening to apply this framework today. Think about a project, a relationship, or even just a Tuesday afternoon that went completely off the rails for you recently.
What was the 80% that failed? Acknowledge it.
Now, force your brain to identify the 20% that functioned properly. Did you learn a new limitation? Did someone step up to help you? That 20% is your leverage to get back up.
Dr. Dye visualizes this concept using a brilliant metaphor about balloons. Fundamentally, a human being is like a balloon. A balloon has no inherent ability to fly in its own right. It only rises if it is properly pumped with air.
Right.
Similarly, no student, no employee, and no child is inherently a lost cause if they're injected with the right motivational air.
Frustration, as he explicitly titled one of his books, is designed to be utilized as motivation, not as a signal for discouragement. The wild dogs are the frustration. The conscious choice to remember the 20% that went right, that is the air being pumped into the balloon.
Which begs a deeper question, honestly. Where did Dr. Dye learn to pump this air? This profound belief in aggressively encouraging others didn't just manifest out of thin air.
No, it rarely does. It stems from his deepest, most personal relationships, specifically with his father.
His father passed away 9 years ago from a heart attack at the age of 78.
The contrast between the grueling pressure of Taiwanese society and the sanctuary provided by his father is incredibly stark. When Dr. Dai was failing those university entrance exams and wandering through years of unemployment, the societal expectation would be for a parent to express intense shame, anger, or at least critical disappointment.
But his father entirely rejected that script. He never scolded his son. When faced with these massive academic and professional failures, his father simply looked at him and said, "Never mind, don't be discouraged, try again."
He absolutely refused to let his son's balloon deflate.
And as his father aged, this radical encouragement evolved into a beautiful, almost exaggerated practice of loving praise for the mundane.
It's so heartwarming. There are stories in the text of Dr. Day bringing home a simple, everyday zongzi for his dad.
A traditional rice dumpling for our listeners.
Right. His father would take a bite and exclaim, "Where did you buy this? This is the most delicious rice dumpling in the entire world."
Or he would look at a rudimentary watercolor painting done by his young grandchildren and marvel at it as if he were standing in the Louvre.
The emotional half-life of that relentless daily positivity is incredibly long. Shortly after his father passed away, Dr. Dai's young grandchildren were playing in the bathtub. Missing their grandfather, they began singing a song dedicated to him.
Oh man, the story gets me. Dr. Dai's daughter suddenly quieted her brother, claiming she could hear her grandpa talking back to her.
And when they asked what he was saying, she replied, "He's saying, 'Thank you, this is the most beautiful song I've ever heard.'"
It reveals how deeply his father's voice had become the internal monologue for the next generation. It makes you examine your own daily friction, you know? In the stress of modern life, it is remarkably easy to snap at a spouse, criticize a coworker, or belittle a child over trivial mistakes.
Viewed through that lens, his father's exaggerated praise wasn't just him being eccentric. It was a highly intentional, radical act of love. He was building armor around his family.
Dr. Dye points to a specific text that shapes his ultimate goal of simply being a person who is missed. He cites Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29.
The verse advises letting no unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs.
It is an ancient acknowledgement of the neurobiological weight of language.
Words possess staggering infinite power. They can literally alter someone's brain chemistry, tearing down their resilience or injecting life-saving air into their balloon.
Dr. Dye's father chose to heal deliberately every single day, and that conscious choice is the exact reason his presence is so deeply missed.
It really forces a reckoning with how we wield our own language. Every interaction is a choice to either inflate or deflate the people around us.
So as we synthesize this deep dive, we're left with a powerful toolkit. You know how to manufacture your own discipline by creating a checklist that triggers daily dopamine rewards.
You understand how to program your reticular activating system with an observing eye to capture the profound lessons hidden in the mundane.
You know that raw observation must be coupled with the relentless hustle of Wo Yuan Yi. I am willing to force your success into reality.
And when the inevitable chaos strikes, you are equipped to use the 80-20 reframing technique for rapid psychological recovery.
And most importantly, you recognize the radical power of choosing words that build people up. But I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to process on your own today.
A shift in perspective.
Exactly. We have talked extensively today about striving to be a person who is missed by your family, your friends, and your community. But what if we applied that exact same rigorous standard to ourselves?
That's a fascinating way to look at it.
If you project yourself 10 years into the future and look back at the version of you listening to this right now, will you miss the person you are today? Or will you be infinitely, profoundly grateful for the discipline, the resilience, and the positive habits you made the unyielding decision to start right now? You have the tools, the neurobiology, and the framework. You just have to be willing to accomplish the mission.